Food, food, food. Shalom, it's following Yahshua. I know I hit on this a lot. I know I talk about it a lot. But food. And the reason I'm talking about it is because this thing is not being overly exposed the way it needs to be exposed. And I have my ideas why. Food. The Department of Agriculture is not reporting the real numbers of what is happening with food. With the amount of acreage of fields that are not planted with soy and corn. And a lot of people say, oh, no big deal. It is a big deal. Because how many products come from corn? A lot of you like to eat high fructose corn syrup, corn, or regular corn syrup, or corn oil, ethanol, and many other various corn products. Soy, these are staples in this culture. And when you're taking into consideration that and all of the food crises going on globally, you're about to see a steady hike in food. And I don't think this is a fixable thing. You know, whether you study it or not, there is something called the solar minimum, meaning that there's a shift in the sun. And we will start to see temperatures slowly drop. These phenomenon that we saw this year with flooding in the Midwest, this is not a one-year thing. This is going to be a repetitive thing year after year, which is going to affect the prices of food, which is going to affect how much is being produced. And globally, food is being hard to come by. The prices of food are steady going to start hiking globally. Now again, people say it's no big deal, but when you read the Bible, and we talked about this last live stream, last Thursday, or what the world calls Thursday, but fifth day. Joseph was able to buy up Egypt due to the lack of food, due to the fact that Egypt was the only place that had food. Now how does that apply today? Food is power. See, I can go without putting gas in my car. I can survive. I may not be able to get to work, but I can survive. I can survive without being able to buy a new shirt, a new underwear, a new pair of socks. I can survive without that. You can't survive without food. Food is a weapon. And this is why I try to provoke thought and tell people to store food. Come out of her. Because you're going to need to produce food, and you're going to need to produce a lot of food. And store that food and put that food up. Dehydration, canning, freezing, whatever it means, you're going to have to put that food up. But in the story of Joseph, the people, after they gave up all their money to buy food, they still needed to survive. So they sold their lands, their cattle, and eventually themselves into servitude. The Egyptians sold themselves into servitude because they didn't have food. In a sense, in a weird way, the food had been weaponized. It is so easy for food to be weaponized in this modern culture because most people don't have much more than 3 to 5 days worth of food in their house. Now, if they want to weaponize it and say the only way that you can get food is if you obey their commands, what are you going to do? This is why I speak of self-sufficiency and coming out of her. Joining tribes and communities, because food prices are going to rise, and eventually they're going to get to a point, like the Egyptians, they were priced out of buying food. They had no more money. The price of food had gotten so expensive And they were now priced out. They could not afford it. So they had to sell their items, their cattle, and then eventually their lands and themselves to have food. Well, you can mitigate that. You can buy some land and grow your food. You can raise your food. Because we are under this assumption that this thing is fixable. And I don't see it as it being fixable. I see it as the weaponization of food. Great, you got an AR-15. Great, you got an AK-47. Great, you got a 9mm. If you are an Israelite, then I surely hope your plan isn't to go around and try to rob people. Because I'm pretty sure y'all will make sure you get got. So you should have those resources to protect you and your family and your food, your land, your tribe, your community. But you can't eat brass. You can't eat steel casings. You can't eat a full metal jacket. I mean, you can. Can't tell you how good it's going to be for you. Shalom, sorry about that. Again, I can't tell you how good it's going to be for you, but the importance is food. And we have seen throughout history multiple times where the lack of food has killed millions. We have been, oh, I got food stamps. I'm okay. No, because they'll price those food stamps out. And what happens when they start making stronger and stronger and stringent and more stringent requirements for you to get those food stamps? Parents are already selling out their children to get food stamps. Selling their children out. We see these crises in other countries. Venezuela, Argentina. We see these things. Food and water are two of the most valuable things. Without water, you can't grow your food. Do you have those two things secure? Water and food? Because if you don't, how do you plan on surviving? Making it. We see throughout the book, time of Elijah, Jezebel and Ahab, that it didn't rain. And people, the woman and her son, they were going to eat the last morsel of food and die. Why? Because it had not rained. I'm trying to provoke thought in those of us that are in this faith. Because food is a commodity. And these food prices are going to continue to rise just like in a time of Egypt until you are priced out. And then what did Pharaoh do? He moved everybody into the cities. Well, we don't got to worry about that because everybody's already in the cities. He wanted them moved into the cities. I'm trying to provoke thought. I'm trying to get us to look back at how things were, because they are coming again. As it was, so shall it be again. It's coming again. But in this society, we have been pacified to believe that what is will always be there, simply because we believe that we're special. Or you believe that Yah's going to take care of you, and his way of taking care of you is this. All I have to do is sit here and he's going to give me something. No. Yah positioned Joseph in a position of for the saving of his house. Well, right now, you have many of, or a few of us in Israel who are in position to tell you to start making moves. No, we're not in positions of government, but we are in a position, we have a voice, and we're telling you, start putting yourself, you're going to have to raise your own food. You're going to have to learn to plant seeds in the soil and raise your food. You're going to have to learn how to plant foods that have a high caloric intake, so you can have the energy. You're going to have to take responsibility. I understand You read the agenda 2030. Look that up. Sustainable living, which means it's them taking more control. And you don't see a problem with that because you believe that the food's always going to be there. But what if they start creating a system, and they already are? Well, in order to get that food, you must acquiesce to what they want you to do. Many will sell themselves out, will sell out everything, will be servants and slaves to acquire food. But you won't be a servant in a righteous way. You'll be a servant and a slave to this system, the way so many are already, servants and slaves to this system. I try to provoke this thought because before we get to 2030, it's going to have to slowly get worse, and it already is slowly getting worse. Read the story. Do something more than sit back and watch videos on YouTube. Do some personal studying of what is happening to the agriculture. Look at the solar minimum. Read the economic ramifications of the flooding that has taken place, and how this is not it happened this year and this year alone. How it is getting worse. Year by year, it has gotten worse. Read about how food is becoming scarce worldwide. Although I don't eat pig, in Israel we should not be. But look at what's happened with the swine. Look at what happened with these worms in China that are eating their grain. Stories about India having swarms of locusts cleaning out their fields. The soil here in the Midwest is swampland. They can't even get their tractors in there. The corn is supposed to be up to people's knees right now, and the corn it's that tall. There's going to be a severe lack of harvest, which means food prices will rise. Hey, they may rise a quarter here, smaller sizes there, $1 here, smaller sizes there. You're going to feel it in your pocketbook. And I don't know if you ever studied the flooding, but when the flooding took place like this years ago, the farmers were not able to plant even the next year. Can you imagine 2 or 3 years with them not being able to plant the required amount of grain that everybody else relies on? Do you know that beef and requires these fields? But if these fields are swamplands, where are they going to get their hay from? We're not thinking. As Yahshua, we're not thinking. We're not being prudent for seeing the evil. We're being stupid and ignoring the evil that is coming that we can clearly see. Get your face off of YouTube and Facebook looking at remedial shit. Start looking at some real things. If you read the Bible, you will see how famine is a prominent thing taking place. Read 2 Esdras 15 and 16. It talks about famine. People fought wars over food and water. I hope those that have the ears to hear are hearing. Get out. Learn to grow your food. Because we're getting back and we're coming back to the agricultural, agrarian life that we have forsook and ignored. We have forsook and ignored that agrarian, agricultural lifestyle that is so prominent throughout our book. So much so that Yahshua talked about it in his parables. Song of Solomon, in reference to sexuality, references agricultural. But we miss it. We're over here trying to appease other people, win awards, look good. I'm going to tell you one thing. No matter how many head coverings you have on, how many fringes you have on, when your ass is starving, because you did not foresee the evil and hide yourself. Get out of her. Come out of her. Flee the sin. Put yourself in a better position now. Get your acre, get your 10, join a community, for crying out loud. The time of excuses is over. completely over. The time for action is now. Bless you. Shalom.